This show is sponsored by the ComX Shop.
Welcome to Tuesday Chinwag with your host, Leigh Chalker, writer, artist, and creator of the comic series Battle for Buzzle.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Chinwag. I am a battle-scarred Leigh Chalker, the host this evening, and as always, and not battle-scarred that is, but the host. And that comic there, B for B, Battle for Bustle, Volume 2, Issue 1, is out and available in the ComX Shop. Now, the reason the ComX Shop is so important is because it sponsors the live streams that are across the ComX network, bringing you content of all sorts of things, how to make a comic book, and Friday night drink and draws, Chinwag, AusComX Show. There's a whole heap of different variety of stuff. And basically the ComX Shop stocks over 100 comic books by Australian creators and publishers, and you can get as many comics as you wish for a $9 flat rate. Now, the best thing that you can do to support ComX, I'll buy comic books. You don't even have to buy mine. You can buy anyone else's because it makes them feel good. It encourages them. And that's what we're all about here, is making people feel good and wanting to pick up the art, because creativity is the best sort of therapy you can do, I reckon. Look, like, subscribe, find it anywhere you can. Just do add to the numbers and share. Sharing is the most important thing because it builds the algorithms. It sends the message out. It shares with your mates. It does all those things. Builds the community bigger, better, stronger, and invites more people here, and we can watch the content. So basically comments are welcome. Feel free to ask questions of these gentlemen that are on the screen. Hello Absinthe, how are you? There will be people popping in and out of the show as we go this evening because, as always, it is a fluid show, and that's the way I like it. So for this evening, the show is The Human Fly, and we have Christopher, Peter, and Jan, and I'm going to quickly duck around the room and allow them to introduce themselves to you so you know exactly who they are. Christopher, hello, sir.
Hello, Mr. Chalker. Good to see you again. And I'm Chris Sequeira, a comic book writer and editor of too many years standing. I've worked on indie comics in Australia. I've been a self-publisher. I've worked for other publishers, and I've written stories for Marvel, DC, Boom Studios, Dynamite, IDWs, done licensed stuff, Star Trek. So you name it, I'm a comics tragic. And I'm lucky to be at ground zero when the Human Fly comic book series, which is a wonderful three-nation connection, Australia, Canada, and the USA, came into being, and the lovely gentleman here with me had crucial roles in that.
Very good. Excellent. We're going to get into that, man. We're going to get into that and spread the Human Fly word and how it's all come together and brought this character back. G'day, Christopher. How are you, mate? Thank you for watching. Now, down the bottom, we have Mr. Peter Lawson. How are you, mate? Introduce yourself to the world.
To answer your question, how am I? I am good, thank you. Yes, I'm
very good to hear, sir.
Peter Lawson. I'm one of the artists on the first issue of Human Fly. I've been in comics for probably about the last five years or so with Reverie. And Chris brought me on board for the Human Fly, which I was incredibly excited about doing because I used to read the old Marvel comics back in the day. So I was dead keen to get on board and had a really good time doing it. And that's
awesome.
It.
Awesome. No, well, mate, don't you let yourself stop there, because I want plenty out of you tonight, mate, because I think it's a beautiful thing, man, that you got the Human Fly, because I've watched you improve out of sight as an artist, and I think that you should be very proud, man, of the job you've done and the leaps you've taken, man. It blows my mind. It's actually made me really jealous, Peter, and I want to be a better artist because you're a better artist, man, and it just drives me on, brother, so keep going. Jeffrey Beats, hey all, ready for a Chinwag listen. Good on you, Jeffrey. Thanks for watching and listening, man. Now, Dr. Jan Scherpenhausen, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. I just retired, so I've gone from being one of these people with a day job, which some people like having a day job.
Yeah.
Never was really my cup of tea, so I don't think it's before time. I actually thought when I was 18 that one day I would be a full-time comic book artist, but I didn't think it would be 50 years later. And my math isn't very good. It's actually probably more than that. That's probably long enough. So long time, comic book addict. I like to write fiction as well. I do write fiction. Amongst my many adventures, I met this troublemaker up here on my right, who has roped me into so many projects over the years. But I'm very lucky that he has, because I am not a mover and shaker. I am more just a shaker. I would sit in my cave and tremble, and hope that Stan Leigh or some editor would come and knock on my door and say, "Oh, we've got work for you." Probably 80% of the work that I've got has been through my long association with Chris. So we've created stuff together. I've created my own stuff. Now I'm on board as the artist of the Human Fly, which is pretty exciting. One time Marvel property, has some cachet still with certain people like Bill Sienkiewicz and Alex Ross. There are people like Mark Waid, Jim Kruger, who, Jim Kruger's actually going to be involved. So, and as you know, Bill Sienkiewicz has already done a cover for us. So it's fantastic. We've had Peter come on board, so who's sort of really made the whole thing shine. Dan Lynch done a great job on the colours. Working with Chris, always a joy. So you find me a happy man tonight.
Very good. I'm glad, mate. I think we've got 4 happy men on screen. So, it's look, I appreciate the fact that you're here, Jan. It's really nice to meet you, man, because
it's nice to talk to like-minded people.
Yes, mate. Yes, I agree. It's from being in far north Queensland when I was younger, it was very difficult to find like-minded people, and that's one of the things that I'm most humble and blessed about with ComX and Chinwag, is the fact that I get to meet people that I've admired from afar, and people that I continually admire and appreciate for their efforts and all the work they've done, because comics aren't an easy thing to make. People pick them up from the shelf and read them and put them back down, but there's an awful lot of heart and dreams and soul and communication that goes into it, like everything. So the creation of a comic book is essentially a relationship between people. We're very happy that Jan and Chris, who are obviously great mates and got a bit of spark between them, are here tonight. So I'm excited about that. And Peter, you're still making me jealous, man, with that artwork. So there we go. So I had to get that out of my system. It's Shionche, A1 on 1. Time to settle in for the evening. Now, gentlemen, before we start, Shionche, because you're such a regular on the show, would you allow me to call you Shawnee, if that's okay? I don't want to seem too familiar with you, but let me know, because you're part of the Chinwag family now, and I'd just like to make you feel comfortable, if that's okay. All right, gentlemen, so where would we like to start on our journey from the Human Fly to IPI to the Human Fly International, when it was at Marvel? Where would we like to go back to the beginning of what the Human Fly is, for those out there that don't know?
Well, Peter had his hand up there for a second. Pete, did you have something you wanted to lead with?
You were pointing up.
I'll start. But yeah, I remember Got the book
Look.
back when Marvel ran it, and basically it was like, okay, it's a new Marvel comic, good, I'll just get it. Knew nothing about the Human Fly at that point. Because he's real tag intrigued me. But yeah, I'd read anything that came out back then, but that comic, I really did enjoy it. It wasn't anything great or groundbreaking or anything, but it was a fun comic. And essentially that's what you'd read them for. And while I was reading that, I caught some things on late night TV of the Human Fly, like the aeroplane stunt that he rode on the top of the whatever model plane it was, things like that, and thought, oh, okay, cool, that added a different dimension to it. And yeah, I've got every issue that Marvel ran of that out in my boxes there somewhere. So yeah, it was definitely a buzz to be able to be involved in something that had a little bit of history to back when I was a young whippersnapper reading comics. It was almost as exciting as getting a phone call from Marvel saying to draw something. So
That's awesome, man.
Look, I can relate to what Peter said because I got the comic when it came out when I was a little kid, and this is no word of a lie, I can remember watching the news in the lounge room in Dulwich Hill in Sydney after school one night, and the story came on about when he tried to jump the 26 buses in the stadium in Montreal and crashed. It was on the news, and it was like, that's the guy from the comic I read. Right? And it was, freakish. So Tony Babinski, who may join us later, who's half of the company Human Fly International, Inc., who owns the Human Fly, all the assets these days, and the fact we're doing the comic and the fact there's a movie coming up, etc., it all goes down to Tony and Tony's investigative journalism of all things. But Tony makes the point. There's Batman, there's Spider-Man, there's Daredevil, there's all these great characters. This is the only one that's based on someone who was real.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of a magic element that we've got that no one else has got. And what we're trying to do with that in the stories, we're going to take full advantage of that. But also, certainly we'll blend in plenty of classic sort of superhero tropes, the kind you get with any like Batman-esque superhero without superhuman powers. Will go all that way. But the fact that, there's a baseline that's a real guy, or is it guys? Who knows? You never know. That's incredible fun. So I guess we're doing that, and I'm giving it a good mix with all the things that I wanted to see in the old Marvel Human Fly series, but they never did or never got around to doing, because I went for 19 issues, right? Yeah. So if it had gone longer, some of the things I would have liked to have seen, would have liked to have done, like have a cool costumed super adversary or two, and maybe Jan can put some light on that later on. So it's got that unique baseline. It's a real guy. It was absolutely a real guy.
Yeah, that's cool. It's I guess that's probably, you don't. Yeah, that is cool. I don't know much about him. Shionchi, absolutely feel free, call me Shawnee. Honoured to be considered part of such an awesome family. Honour is ours, Shawnee. Thank you very much, mate. Ray Williams, missed the show last week. Glad to see it this week. Well, Ray, I had the week off, mate. I just once in a blue moon, I just needed a week off, mate, just to recharge the energy and the batteries and stuff, and get ready to come back cracking, mate, 100%, So we're here and we're back for the rest of the year. So good to go. Thank you for being here. Now, again, the Human Fly, to me, I like the concept. It's based on someone real, like not a made up type of individual. I mean, I'm sort of sitting here, Chris and guys, and thinking back then, it would have been a total trip out to be reading this comic book and see the dude, like jumping, buses and cars, like in crashing, like hopefully he made that out okay. Okay. And hopefully that wasn't the reason why the comic book series finished. But, like with this new resurgence, it's good to get human characters. And I know, Chris, you're a hell of a writer, man, so you'd be throwing everything at it. And you brought along Yarn, your old mate. So it's he was the man, and he's here with us now. So Yarn, what was it like, mate, drawing the human fly, getting that phone call from Chris to say, bud, mate, hang on, like, let's have a chat about the human fly. Take me back to that moment, man. Well, did you think you were getting invited to lunch that day or something? Only to find out
that's quite what you're going to be expecting, but you've got to realise that I've had 20 years of calls from Chris.
Well, for now, let's delete all of that 20 years and let's go.
I've got this editor from DC. I've been talking to him. He's interested in the pitch. Do you want to draw me this many pages or a cover or some character sketches? And so I'm like, when it comes off the presses and I hold it in my hands, I'll and look, I mean, obviously this is no disrespect to Chris whatsoever. I mean, like I said, 90% of what I've got as gigs and things like this is through Chris. And Chris is, the word indefatigable in the dictionary, his picture. And, it's so hard, as you were saying before, this not just doing the work, but getting the work. There's so much competition out there. And so, you've got to have the chops for sure, but you've also got to have the ability to get in front of people, come up with ideas, take rejection. And so, the number of pictures that Chris and I put together and the this close stories, I came this close, and this was one without Chris's help to working for 2000 AD. But, change of editors, I moved back to Australia. I got busy doing my first postgraduate study. It didn't happen. So, look, what was it like? Honestly, the idea of working with Chris is what excites me, to be honest with you. I'm a bit of the opinion of Alan Moore. Alan Moore once said, there's no such thing as great characters, only great treatments. And I've always said, I am not going to work with some schmuck. I write my own stories. I think I'm a good writer. And if I'm going to write somebody else's story, they better be a damn good writer. Yeah. And as you said, Chris is a freaking awesome writer. He's one of the few people I will take the direction from. And and we don't agree on everything, but, generally our relationship works fairly seamlessly because we both know good when we see it. And if he comes to me with an idea and says, maybe this panel, just change this or that, and it doesn't happen. And I guess that's the thing too. If somebody's always got a problem and always wants to change things, then after a while it's like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, or this person doesn't know good. Yeah. But so we tend to stay in our own lanes. But if one of us says, I'll comment on the writing, he'll comment on the art, and there's a lot of refining we help each other with. I mean, to give you an example, we just did 4 tribute covers for the forthcoming issues. The first one was the Giordano cover, and Chris said, you know the one I'm talking about. I said, yes, I know the one.
Infantino.
Infantino, yes. And went straight ahead. And then I came up with an idea for a Captain America one. He loved it, straight ahead. Then he said Green Hornet. I'm saying, what are you talking about? That's never going to work. And we went away from it. And then I thought about it. And then I worked out a way to make it work, and it looks brilliant. And then the same with this, we did a Spider-Man one. Again, I'm like, I don't know, I don't like this pose, and I don't think it, and then, but, you know, so generally I'll go that extra yard when Chris says something to me, even though I might, you know, I'm not convinced, you know. Chris is right a lot of the time, you know. He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff, you know.
You know that's now recorded, Jan. You may never live that down, mate, admitting that. That may be on a constant playback.
No, that's just, I'm on record as a guy who knows good when he sees it.
Well, in all fairness, yeah, Jan is 100% correct in that he can bring things up with me about, look, you've got 5 panels on that page. I think it should be 6, or I should think it should be 4, or I think there's enough space in there. This is a really good one. This is a relevant one. He goes, I think you've got a particular sequence of actions happening on that page or on those 2 pages, and I think there's breathing room for me to put in a little extra bit, like, and I won't give it away because it's something we're doing soon, but it might be a guy's falling out of a plane and he's got to grab a parachute or a skyhook or something to save him. And I've got it mapped out how many panels I think we need to do. But Jan goes, I figured out a way that there can be an extra moment of tension where I can fit in another 2 panels without squashing it, where he tries to grab the thing that's going to save his life and something pulls it away from him. And he's got to make another desperate, clever, extra lunge of energy to get it. And he talked it through with me, and I'm going, frick, man, that's great. Just, go for it. Do it. Yeah, you're right. That's wonderful. Let me get out of the way. And I said, and if I've got a dialogue around it, or add a oomph or an R or R or whatever in the captions and the dialogue, we'll do it, because it's just too good not to do. And that's from working with Jan for years and years and years. And I know that he's not doing that because he wants to get out of work and do something that's going to be quicker. He's doing it because it'll actually make it a more gripping scene, or actually convey what I wanted to get across in the first place. He doesn't do it for reasons of shortcuts. He does it for this, as like he's in the comic reader's seat. This will make this a cooler, more tense scene. Hey, Tony.
Good morning. Good evening in Australia, everybody. Good morning from Canada. I'm sorry.
Tony. That's okay, mate. My name's Leigh. I'm your host this evening, mate. We've been chatting a little bit this week, so welcome to Chinwag, and it's nice to have you and nice to meet you, man. So I know it's a little bit early over there, but I hope you've had a couple of coffees and everything, because you know the other 3 fellas here are super pumped and energized, talking about the human fly, man. You know. And I think they've got a few coffees in them as well to match where, like you're at energetically and things. Now, Tony, just a little breakdown of yourself for the people that are watching at home, mate, and all over the world that haven't met you until this point. So what is your role, Tony, in the human fly, sir?
Well, I would call myself the creative director of the Human Fly intellectual property. I am a screenwriter from Montreal. I acquired the rights to the Human Fly several years ago while developing a documentary / fiction script based on the real life story of what happened to the Human Fly. And I'm also a fan. I was about 12 years old when the Human Fly first appeared, and he was a Montrealer. I found out yesterday on another podcast that that Rick Rojat, who was the Human Fly, the man in the suit, is from the same neighborhood that I live in now. So even closer ties. In fact, I spoke to somebody yesterday and it'll be on another podcast coming out soon. Not as great as this one, of course.
Oh,
That,
thank you, mate. You've won my heart. You're welcome back anytime now, Tony. Look at you go, mate. Hey, it's like lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this podcaster met Rick when he was 6 years old, right after the stunt. His father worked for the Montreal Gazette and had this guy over for a meal and said, and it was a larger fellow who's kind of limping around, and he said, that's the human fly. So I'm here for historical and for reasons of history and imagination. It's much earlier than I thought it was going to be in Montreal right now, so you'll forgive me. I thought there was a 12-hour difference, but it's a 14-hour difference. That's why I'm late. And so, yeah, so I've been developing the character for many years. I was very fortunate to meet Chris, who's been very dogged in his determination to make a new comic. And I'm really pleased to have worked with Peter on the second story in the comic. He did a great job. The art is fantastic, and I love what Jan's doing. And this is a real passion project I can see for everybody working on it. So it's just really a thrill to be involved, and of course to be with you all in Australia today is great. Yeah.
Man, I'm going to speak for the audience right now, and we're thrilled to have you, man. So, thank you for your time, and thank you for getting up so early to be on and talk about this passion project. Because from what you've just introduced just there, it sounds like, man, you never really had a choice. It's this character's been following you around since you were a young fella, mate. So it would seem that it is only fitting that you're in there behind him, man, and giving it all you got. So yeah, it's the guys like Chris was just mentioning before, which I thought was lovely, is this whole production of this character at the moment, it is a very international, I guess, commitment between people, and you've got Canada, you've got America, you've got Australia, all working, for the love of this character. Now, guys, who else is working on the projects and stuff? For anyone else that doesn't know, who are the other creators that couldn't join?
I'll do a quick rundown of the comic side, because there are quite a few other people, really cool people involved. But Tony, after that, there's the other media side of it, films and other things that are actually in development now. But on the comic side, we had the issue 0, which had lead story by me and drawn by Jan, coloured by Dan Lynch, and everything was lettered by Stephen Kay. Then the second story was by Tony and drawn by Peter, and the covers were by Jan, and the variant cover was by Chewy Chan. So that's the comic side of things for issue 0. Volume 1, which is going to be 4 issues, is going to be me and Jan with probably and I left out, there was a 1-page What If the Human Fly that was drawn by, we were talking about him before we came on air, Paul Mason.
Wow.
And so that's the comic side of things. And in volume 2, Jim Kruger's going to write it. The Jim Kruger is going to write the comic. And volume 3, a young woman named Dana Brower, Brawer, who's written comics for Impact Theory Comics, where Jim was working, and also she's written for TV. I think she did some episodes of the George R.R. Martin-inspired Night Flyers science fiction series. Great, talented person. So she's going to write volume 3. I've got Peter Lawson here in my gun sights to draw one of those storylines, do 4 issues. Haven't quite nailed it down. And we do have, we're planning something that at the moment I'll just call Giant Size Human Fly number 1.
Yeah.
And like the old Giant Size Marvel comics from back in the Fly's original days, they were about 64 pages and had multiple stories in it. What I've got in mind is there's an actor who lives in Australia now who's also a screenwriter and an international actor,
Mm.
And all I'll say is in the 70s, he was on TV wearing a skin-tight costume going up the sides of buildings, and he's interested in writing maybe something reflective of some of those kind of things. But no, haven't sealed the deal yet, but he could be a guest writer in Giant Size Human Fly #1. But there'd probably be also a story by me, a story by Jim, a story by Tony, and a story by Dana. And probably all our artist guys. Yep, and all our artist guys. But that's what's happening with the comics.
Unreal. Hey,
Yep.
you guys are busy, mate. That's fantastic.
We're trying to be. So Tony can tell you about the rest of the creative world of the fly.
Yeah,
We've got
we just got a comment here from Shawnee, and it's like, oh, wow, super early over there, Tony. Thanks for making the time from Shawnee. Shawnee's a regular viewer of the show, mate. So just saying g'day to you and also appreciating the fact that you got here. So while Tony, mate, lead the way. Like, what do you got planned with the human fly, mate, now that we've got a little bit of the map laid out of the comics with Chris there? So
we have a feature film in development. I wrote a script some time ago. We've attached a director by the name of Stephen Campanelli. Stephen is a Montreal-born director who has made a living in Los Angeles. He worked as Clint Eastwood's camera assistant for 30 plus years and has begun to direct on his own in the last 4 or 5. He directed an award-winning film called Indian Horse, which is worth seeing, and a comedy called Drinkwater, which is on Amazon. He's a really good guy. He happened to be at my house last night because he's in Montreal. We just met. I gave him an issue of the comic and a T-shirt. We have a merch program going on. You can buy Human Fly T-shirts at a website called degedin.com. It's a French Canadian DEGUEDINE.com. We started selling merch a couple of weeks ago, and there's a podcast that has started. We recorded one episode in French because we're in Montreal, but another one in English, and there's going to be more coming. And the podcast will be at the intersection of the story of the human fly, comics, pop culture, 70s music, 70s nostalgia, and we're really looking forward to doing it. We hope to speak to different comic creators, including the guys here actually at some point. So you'll be getting a call from me, and people in the film business, etc. I should also say that Stephen just finished shooting. He wrapped shooting a few weeks ago on Clint Eastwood's latest film. Stephen does a lot of the directing for Clint because of Clint's age now. So he'll say, well, why don't you, Campanelli, you do this? So great guy. And he shot some parts of A Star is Born and three Billboards and everything. So we're really excited about the film. It's circulating among some of the top producers here. So we hopefully we'll have some news on that. And the podcast, we'll release the interview I did yesterday in about a week or so. And then when I'm going on vacation after I have a sleep after this phone call. And when I get back at the end of August, we'll start. Lastly, there's been a documentary in development with a company called Astronaut Films UK. And they were, part of their mandate was to find Rick Rojat, the fellow in the suit. And they have found him. We can't say anything about it yet. But there was a lot of press about this in Canada at the beginning of the year. So if you put the human fly into Google, you'll see, you can read about the search. And they've been doing a great job. And in fact, as Peter knows, we incorporated Lucy, the producer, into the second story, and Astronaut Films figure in the comic.
She was a real person.
Yeah, well, she looks great in the comic, and in real life too.
I had no clue. Told me that.
She kind of looks like the person you drew in the story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're highly amused by the depiction. Yeah, so in fact, and part of that thing is that what I want to stress is that maybe I missed this while you were talking, is that what makes the human fly unique is that he was real. He really existed, and there's no other superhero like that. So in every, I insisted in every iteration of the Human Fly, there's something real in the story. That there's some real historical element, because the premise is that he really existed and still exists in some way, and that makes him really unique.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's well, he's obviously still existing in the hearts and minds of you guys, man. Do you know what I mean? Who are all gotten together to champion this character, to a new audience and a new generation of readers and viewers. It seems up and coming and things like that. It's man, you've been busy. I just I admire all the work and the getting together, like because as I was saying to the guys before you popped in, Tony, like man, it's difficult to get a comic book together, like in a neighborhood, let alone a country, let alone across countries. You know what I mean? Like, so like the coordination and the logistics of all of that, man, is very impressive, and it's really really cool. It's did you make any what did you have you ever like as a crew, like I shouldn't say cruise, because obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it, but even just your thought processes, like when you're a young fella, Tony, like, and you saw the Human Fly and you initially, like felt a love for this character, like, and you felt that connection to you. You're obviously strong with writing, being like you've written the well, you're the screenwriter of the film project, etc. Have you what sort of research and stuff went into it, man? Like behind it, was it an original story, or you wanted to keep it real? Like what was your initial like processes, man, in the early days?
Well, we did a lot of research. I have a brother, Bob Babinski, who is a journalist, and we, the reason we were able to find who owned the property in the first place was that we did extensive research, and we also researched, I did some research into the comic. I spoke to Stan Leigh at the time. So, this has been many, 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 many years. And it's partly passion, but also the reality is, if you want to do something that's worth doing, you've got to do the work. So there's times when I said, man, this is taking too long and it's not worth it, but we've come this far, so you don't stop. And it's really paid off. I have to say, I mean, what Chris has done and the guys, it's really great. And I have to say, usually when you're working on something, you keep your head down and you try not to let your emotions figure into it. But I actually went to pick up the printed comic at the printers, because comics are printed mostly in Montreal now at Transcontinental. So I drove out to get the comic, and when I took it out, it was a very emotional experience, because to see it take form like that at home was very special, and to see how much passion everybody's put into it is very moving. Like, the artists, Chris, the other writers. When we were at San Diego Comic-Con last week or 2 weeks ago, and you see there's fans who love the character, and there's been a huge emotional payoff for me. So I'm very grateful to Chris in particular for having gone this far. Because
you are most welcome, sir. You are most welcome. I mean, I'll share a little bit of this is definitely at the risk of oversharing, which I do far too frequently. My friends and family tell me, but we were chatting about via email on how pleased we were with that first issue 0, a few months back, and Tony was very nice. He paid me the compliment of, I'm aware you've had some health issues this year, and I have. That's why I got this thing over my face. But and he said, I really appreciate you persevering around your various stays in hospital, etc. And I said to him honestly, and I'll say it in public, is this, as tricky as it was keeping that and the IPI comics ship afloat this year with multiple stays in hospital and recovery. This bloody comic was a godsend. To have the pressure on us to get that issue 0 done was a glue that kept my mind together, because it was work and thought and work and lots of close liaison with Jan in particular, but then also Dan Lynch and Steve Kay, the letterer, and my boss, Jerry Huntman at IPO Comics and IFWG Publishing, and Alan Brewer, Tony's partner there for Human Fly International. So there's work and focus, but there's a hell of a lot of just genuinely excited collaboration. People would throw an idea out, and it was nobody was ever acting like, oh, what you've done is shit. Everyone was going, oh, what about this and what about that angle and would this make that better? And Tony in particular, as we developed the thing, he had some strong ideas for some of the superstructure for the backstory of the human fly. It's probably the best way to say it. And even like the history of the human fly and tapping into the grand traditions of fictional adventure characters without superpowers, the classic, extraordinary people like your Doc Savages and your Tarzans and your Sherlock Holmes and all that, and the Philip Jose Farmer conceit of maybe, they're all of an exceptional standard, for a particular reason or reasons. And it was just an absolute joy to be part of this machine, Mr. Chalker. It was just a thrill that we're doing something and we're building. So you're working on a page or a scene and the whole comic, but also part of a whole vision, and that's damn fun.
Yeah. Oh man, Chris, I obviously, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm seeing the energy between you guys as well, and respect between each other and being comfortable to talk about stuff. But, one thing is, man, is, I've had a lot of thoughts for you since I met you this year and stuff, and I've known what you're going through. And to hear you speak that, this creative process was something that aided you, man, through what you've had to go through and stuff like that. That's a really beautiful thing, man. And I've always, anyone that knows Chinwag and has watched it enough knows that I'm a huge advocate of creativity, having wonderful healing properties, both mentally and physically. And it's good for whoever's doing it, mate, whether you're creating comic books or you're a gardener or you're a sportsman or whatever it is. Creativity, man, is a beautiful thing, and you can create every day. And I'm just so happy you're here, man. So it's great that you're feeling,
Now, can I throw a line out on that, on the collaboration theme? He's been very quiet, but Peter Lawson was like, and he paired up with Tony for Tony's backup story, which laid down some of these big clues about the human fly history. And that was another case of serendipity and just pure talent, because I only knew about Peter's stuff because he's in those sometimes Thursday night comic book online meetings that Tad Petrowski and Dave DeVries hold, and I met him through that. Yeah. And someone would say, "What you drawing this week, Pete?" And he'd stick a drawing up on the screen, and I'd go, "Holy heck, why have I not heard of this guy before?" And so when it was like, we need another artist for issue 0, it was like, he's more than ready. Will he do it? Will he do it? And he's in there like a shot. So Tony and Peter are our transatlantic, trans-equatorial combo. And Peter, what was that like for you, mate?
It was, I was really excited when you asked me to do it. What you didn't tell me when you asked me to do it was it would be in issue 1. So no pressure, or issue 0 as it turned out. And Tony would be writing it, who owns the whole thing. So yeah, no pressure there. All of a sudden it's like, it was really quite daunting, but okay, it's all right, because I had the time to do it. I'm not doing anything else at the moment, so I could concentrate on that. So that's good. Then I got Tony's script, and I never met Tony. Don't know him from Barcelona.
Nice to meet you.
It's not what I expected it to be at all. It was completely nothing in that 8 pages is anything that I expected to see there, which really excited me. The little sort of backstory, intrigue stuff that's cleverly put into those 8 pages, planting the seeds for the future issues. It's brilliant. And it was just a really fun little sandbox to play in. And
Oh, have we lost him there? There he is.
And I've worked with a writer in the past who wasn't the easiest scripts to interpret. To get one that was just so clean and easy to go, okay, this is what he wants, and it works. I didn't have to suggest a change. There wasn't any I wanted to make. It was just there, and it was a breeze. It was just so much fun to do, and such an honour to be part of it. It was, yeah, I can't wait to do more. I just enjoyed that so much.
You know what's really fun is that I you mentioned the international aspect of it. I actually
from way back. Yeah. Okay, done.
I'm sorry, Peter. I interrupted you.
So I'm done.
What I want to say, you mentioned the international aspect. What's really fun is that I got around to writing the script while I was in Saudi Arabia in December. I was working on the FIFA Club World Cup in Jeddah, and so I said, "Oh well, I've got time now to do it." And so, given the the wide scope of the character, I just thought this is crazy. I'm writing it in a tent basically in Jeddah. To send to somebody to Australia to tell a story about a character in Montreal. And I got to say, as a Montreal, I love what Jan and Chris did, setting the story in Montreal at the Olympic Stadium with the Canadian Prime Minister. It's just so fun, so freewheeling and fun.
Well, you can imagine how delighted I was when Chris showed me the structure that I was going to have to draw page after page. And I'm like, oh my God, he's done it to me again. Because Chris will always say, I want you to draw this thing, and there's 20 people, and one looks sad, and another one, but they're all being filmed from behind, and it's like, yeah, I think I can make this work. It was
beautiful.
It is a fantastic stroke. I mean, it was a stroke of genius. I mean, it just lent itself to a stunt. It was like, what could we possibly use for a stunt? And it's like, oh, here's a building design for one. So it was like, it was fantastic. It was
for the viewers, like a structure like that stadium, that's a pretty amazing structure. How did someone who has to basically draw that on 1,000 different angles, how do you go about that for a comic?
That comes from having drawn a lot of, and this is one thing that Chris knows about me, is I'm fairly good with perspective. And if I know the structure of something, I can turn it around in my head. And there was a lot of good reference. And it may be obvious that sometimes I've just taken the same shot, photoshopped it, and turned it on an angle to make it look like it's a new shot, or taken a detail. So I didn't have to, drawing it the number of times that I did, the amount of work that went into that comic, and because of all the things that were happening, my schedule was very tight, and I had to go back to work. I was working full time and coming home and drawing that issue at night. So, and that when Peter came on board, so Chris said, "Oh, I think we're going to have somebody else draw an issue, and then maybe we can cut a couple of pages from our story." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's not bad." And I said, "Well, who?" And it's funny because, and this always happens with these stories in the comic book business. Oh, this was my idea. Oh, it was my idea. But I know I was thinking about Peter because I've been following his stuff on Facebook, and I thought, wow, this guy's really good. He should be doing something. And maybe Chris did mention to me, oh, I'm thinking of getting Peter Lawson, but to me it was like, yeah, that's the guy you should get. You know, I mean, there's we all know who's on the Australian scene, but a lot of guys who are great as semi-retired or whatever, and I just thought Peter was the perfect choice. Of course, straight away I thought, oh, well, I'm going to have to bring my A game because it's going to be fantastic. And it was. I mean, when I saw those pages starting to appear, it was like, wow, this is, you always want to, somebody once said to me, you always want to work with someone better than you if you can, because they will make you look good. The better the people that you've got working with, that they will lift your project for you. So, sorry.
The fluidity.
There's a secret about yarn that I had going in that really helped, which is I've always known that if he has his druthers, he would love to do a comic book set in the jungle because there's no freaking buildings. But the truth is, he is excellent at architecture. When I remember years ago, he did, just for his own amusement, he did a Daredevil poster of Daredevil sort of swinging, and the skyscrapers of New York are sort of around him and below him. And every time I've ever worked on a comic, whether it's been, somebody strolling down a city street at ground level and you can see the buildings, yarn draws really good buildings and architecture. He tells me he doesn't like it, but then he'll show me pages of stuff, and there it is again and again. And he never takes the lazy way out and makes some generic, boxes. He really gets into, oh, well, this will have a nice sandstone facade here, and this will have, some Doric columns or something like that.
I'll tell you why that is, though. There's a reason for that, and that is because when I was growing up, the comics that I read, the stuff that really impressed me were these guys who would do these beautiful backgrounds and didn't skim. And generally they were a lot cleverer than I were, though, because they would cheat it, but not in a bad way. But like Colin will draw everything really big, so there's and a lot's in shadow and stuff like that, and Kirby just doesn't look like any actual architecture, but it looks convincing. Whereas I'm sort of like, I have to be careful not to put in every brick and window, but yeah, particularly Colin. If you look at his backgrounds, they're amazing, and they really help make it. It adds so much.
So look, I was, I knew I was on solid ground because, like Tony said, it needed to be real, and it's got to feel real, and that means you'll see lots of places in the story where you go, that's a real place, because that's going to help it. And if we find a place, and I can tell you that I've got a list of real locations where the landscape or the architecture just goes, that's a stunt, we're going to do it. Then we've got to make the stunt really cool, but that combines those couple of things together, real, thriller, the thriller environment of doing a stunt that's probably, could end up with you splashed all over the landscape, but that's part of the genre.
While we're on the subject of architecture, though, props to Peter again, because obviously I'm very passionate. I notice architecture and the way people draw architecture and how it, adds to the whole feel. And again, amongst the many things that impressed me when Peter's pages were coming in, I thought the architecture was really spot on. Which I think Tony probably.
That is a new area with me. I've not had a lot of reason to even worry about that sort of thing in the past.
I got to tell you, I was so
my last
thrilled.
comic place on a beach. So it was all like rocks and sand and waves. And so this time I had to do a lot of research and make sure that the building in London that we wanted to use was that building, and that anything you saw around it was what you would see around it. I didn't want to put a generic city background there when the girl's supposed to be in Heron Tower. It's got to be what you see out that window.
But that's what impressed me. And I recognise that those buildings. I said, that's in London. That's a London.
Yeah, that was the goal, yeah. I wanted to work London Bridge in there some way, but my frames weren't letting me do it.
Next time, Pete. Next time.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now, Tony, you had something to add there.
Yeah.
I see you chewing down the bottom. You want to jump in and add something.
Well, I was just so thrilled by what Peter and Jan did. It's incredible. I mean, it's one thing to write a story when you see it rendered so beautifully, and again, in every detail, from the architecture to the Fly's suit in both issues to the action. The action sequences are amazing. Chris wrote a great fight scene. Jan drew it beautifully. My story's filled with action. Peter did it amazingly. I mean, again, you asked me earlier what it was like to see it take form like that was great. Jan, I'm stunned that have you been to Montreal?
No.
No, because I mean, you nailed it. I mean, you got it so well. So yeah, you guys did just an astounding job. I mean, people really have to read these stories and these comics, because I think, and I told Chris this and I mean it, I think that it's much better than what the original Marvel run, story and art wise, much better, rendition of the character and the art. I mean, you guys are great.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are, mate. Yeah, I 100% agree. Look, you know what? One of the interesting things about this, and this only just is a realization I'm just having now, because there was just 19 comics back in 76 to 78. So there's a small body of, literature in the old Human Fly universe, and it's based on a real guy who had just one sort of silky satiny kind of costume, right? Then we jump forward all these years later. It's almost a gift, because it's like we're getting to tweak the costume, to tweak the things that he does, to modernize and make more interesting the fight scenes, the motivation, the level of mystery, all that kind of. It's almost a gift, Tony, because it's like he's frozen in amber between 76 and 78. And then he just completely disappears off the pages of history. And bam, it's like you and Alan have come along to us and said, boys, the toy box is yours. Do whatever creatively you think you can do with this to make it as of now. And it's whereas if we were taking a character with 40 years of continuous comics or something, I don't think we'd be as confident. I don't think, we'd be going, can we even dare change the costume even a bit? Can we do this? Can we do that? But we've got a lot of latitude, and that also means that we're not locked into hard story decisions about him, about his partner Mercury, who is based on a real person that Tony can tell you about. That's an insane thing in itself. I'll let you talk about that. But we can go places with the story that aren't predictable because of that gap in the history. But Tony, you got to tell them about Mercury, man.
Well, so yeah, I mean, some of the real life story of the Fly is pretty dark compared to the lightness we see in the comics. But there was when they were first out there doing the stunts, people were trying to reveal the identity of the man behind the mask, and sometimes photographers are getting too close. And the guys, the Ramesieres and company who own the copyright and were managing the whole thing, were Italian Montrealers. They're kind of rough, and they knew this guy called Joe Mercury, who was a criminal basically, who was about 3 feet wide and 5 feet tall, with a huge afro, a big '70s afro, and they decided to to make him his sidekick. Slash security person, and he was actually ripping cameras out of reporters' hands. So, but the thing is, he looks so ridiculous in his he looks like Electra Woman and Diner Girl in his costume. If you look at the pictures, there's a '70s reference for you. So it was absurd. He later, unfortunately, he later died of a drug overdose with his son. So terribly tragic. But yeah, and his last name was Mercury, with an I at the end. And again, with these guys when they're creating the character, he's called the Human Fly because he flies. He has a rocket on his belt, not because he's like a fly. And so Mercury, the Mercury rocket kind of fit. The whole story is so absurd. I still laugh about it all these years into it. Yeah.
So Leigh, we couldn't resist having that tradition continue with a new Mercury, but we made her far more, realistic and suitable a sidekick. She's a kick-ass stunt person in training on the fly, has a decent, cool costume. She's also masked like he is, but sometimes we'll see her without the mask in the comic, whereas we never do that with the fly. And there it was like part of a real tradition. There was an actual costume sidekick to the '70s real life fly. It's insane. So it was like, we can do something with this.
Yeah. Oh man, I just like how hearing you all talk, how organic it is. Because sometimes when things are hard, it can be difficult, and everyone's pulling apart from each other, but the way you're all talking and like the chemistry that's working. Like, one thing I do want to just ask Tony is, Tony, before this story in this comic book, had you ever written a comic book story before?
I wrote a Human Fly comic with for a precursor to this comic with that Paul Mason drew, which that was a wonderful collaboration. He's great. But that's it. That's it for my comic work. Aside from things I used to draw and write myself as a kid, using my first.
Yeah, right. Okay. Can I briefly, with you being, just to touch base with you and get a little bit of your history, man. Obviously the Human Fly has been, something for you, but like you just mentioned there, comic books when you're a kid and drawing and stuff like that. So you've always had a love for comic books, even not just necessarily the Human Fly, but all things comic books, etc. So that's it.
Yeah, I can remember always being fascinated by comics, and I can remember being very young and seeing an issue of the X-Men drawn by Neil Adams, and going, who's that? And what, my father might have read an issue of the John Buscema Silver Surfer run with the Inhumans in it, and I remember saying, who's an Inhuman? I was always fascinated. I always loved to draw, so I started to. It's funny, Neil Adams is very formative, because I remember going out to buy Hulk 181 with the first appearance of Wolverine. Yeah. And then one of the Ra's al Ghul Batman stories at the same time when I was 7 or 8, and just being totally into it. So from the ages of 7 till young adulthood, I was a very big fan of all comics. I knew the artists backwards and forwards. I'm fascinated by art. I think that Peter and Jan represent this tremendous tradition of the very distinctive line that every artist has. So I could look at a panel of a comic and go, oh, that's drawn by John Buscema and inked by Tom Palmer. Like, I was completely into it. And so drew my own, wrote my own, created my own characters from a very young age. Wanted to be an artist, and then realized that I'm not as good as these guys, but certainly understood panel breakdowns and story breakdown. So when I came to work as a screenwriter, and I don't know how Peter feels about it, because he got my pages, but you're basically breaking down a storyboard page by panel by panel. So it's kind of the same skill. I think if you have to just think of the flow of the action without words. So if somebody's looking at the story without any dialogue you've written, it should make sense, especially under the hands of a great artist. And what got me in writing this 8-page story is it's very condensed. So there's a setting with 3 different settings within the story, and I just kind of hoped it made sense. Chris does it much more often. I got to tell you, having worked on this and then been to Comic-Con a few times, I'm so chuffed by all of the amount of creative people who are in this business doing stuff. I mean, filled with imagination, and that's not answering your question, but comics are to me amazing.
We are fluid, Tony. You answer it any way you wish and feel comfortable, sir. It's
I love the whole medium. I read the Scott McCloud books about making and understanding comics. I'm a big fan of Daniel Close and all the Fantagraphic stuff and independent comics. It's one of the few media left where you really see the individual hand of the creators on it, and I'm happy that the industry's healthy because you get a real person-to-person connection to the work. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that's why I've always loved the medium, and also the storytelling possibilities are endless.
Well, the only limits to a comic book really are the theaters of your mind and your imagination, I guess, mate. You know what I mean?
Very true. Very true. Unlimited budget. Yeah. And I'll name drop here. My buddy Mark Wade has said that he feels that there's more imagination on display in the new releases in a comic shop every Wednesday than there is in Hollywood in a year. Which I think is pretty true.
Well, I mean, just from me, like looking inward, let's say I'll just focus on Australian comics at the moment, just for the present is, and for this example is it's amazing just how many people are out there. It's amazing how many talented people are writing and drawing, creating such a diverse and vast range of comics in Australia. So, I mean, if that's just Australia, then whether it's in Europe or, like America, New Zealand, anywhere in the world, I mean, it's so, man, I'm just a big believer in people telling stories. You know what I mean? It's just it's such an important thing for people to be able to articulate their feelings, man, whether it's science fiction or whether it's slice of life or whether it's, just a cartoon, comedy, anything at all, man. Do you know what I mean? To me, it's my favorite medium. I love comic books.
I think because of the relative low production costs, for want of a better word, I don't even know if production cost is the right term in some ways. There's so few barriers to telling your story with comics.
Yeah.
And with the internet and putting your stuff up on the web if you want to, you don't even have to worry about the cost of printing and distribution if you want to connect with people in in a storytelling format. And because it's visual as well as literary, there's a very very quick level of engagement.
Yeah. It's and you were right, Tony, too, earlier. Like I found through creating my own comic books, man, that when I do a process, I have varying processes. I guess much like the show, I'm quite fluid with things. Each issue is different depending on my motivations and just work processes and things. And when I'm finished my pages, I like to lay them out, one through whatever, and through my eyes, watch the flow of the story as well. And I found with comic books that's a really cool way. And you notice, what am I being clear with that? Is that working there? Could I do it better? Think about, but I found once you get that and it makes sense. It's a beautiful, you know, and then you come in and you add all those lovely pieces, like the beautiful, like, you know, it depends on if you color, you know, you love colors, and the writer comes in and the letters are so important. And then this thing's all coming together, man, you know, like, and then you get to the point where Tony's bubbling and he goes to the, you know, the printing place, and he picks it up in his car and he gets it home, and suddenly he's like, man, this thing is real, you know, like what I've been
And look,
putting.
and that really is a bit of just magic, you know.
Mm,
The fact that Tony lives in Montreal,
yeah.
we didn't pick that printer because of the Human Fly. We had already been using that printer for Super Australians and for Hayden Fry's Bristlemouth A Cove Horror.
Mm.
They are probably the best international comics printer there is. They do DC stuff,
Yep.
right? And we'd had a fabulous relationship, still do, with them since the beginning of the year, setting everything up. So it was like, okay, well, they'll do the fly like everything else they're doing for us. And it turns out they're in Tony's city. And it was just like, what could be cooler? So, you know, he gets to see it, first of all Team Fly International. Yeah, there was something very fitting about Mr. Babinski being the first one of us to lay physical eyes on a copy. That was kind of cool. That's one of those, nice quirks of fate, Mr. Chalker, you just don't plan.
Oh, mate, that's the best gift, is when the universe, you know, like over such a long period of time, you're wondering, you know, like, is it all coming together? You're not sure, and you know, you don't actually get to, you know, while you're in the process of it, you just don't know. You're backwards and forwards. You're questioning. You're doubting. You're persevering. You're wondering if this is what I'm here to do. But then when you get to the end and you look back, you go, wow, man, everything just slowly, like, you know, like slipped in. It's like, man,
Yeah,
that's great.
I'm going to press you, Tony, on this one. So Tony did a TV spot for a Canadian news organisation, and they actually talked to him outside the Montreal Stadium that Yarn drew in issue 0.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny. Yeah, I did a television news report from there, and I hadn't. We shot it on the Esplanade of the stadium, and I hadn't been there. I can't remember having been there since 1976. I was there at the Olympics as a kid to go see football games, and yeah, that was wild. I mean, you know, I'm 60, so it's the other thing that gets you is the number of decades that, you know, have passed by. You go, okay, that was a long time ago, but here I am again, and you get to feel like a kid again. It was very special, you know. And by the way, the Olympic Stadium is not super beloved in Montreal anymore. John, you did a great job, but it's a very controversial building, you know. So, yeah, it was.
I became aware of that when I was researching it, because I was looking at some of the articles. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's an interesting
What makes it so controversial?
Well, boy, it goes way back decades. I think that a lot of people thought that the choice of architect in the first place wasn't optimal. They felt it looked like a big toilet seat, which it kind of does, and it's poorly built. So there, you know, it's you can't really have big concerts in there because the acoustics are terrible. So it's an interesting looking building. It's seldom used anymore. I think that the last time I saw something going on there was a motocross maybe. There for a while, our baseball team, the Montreal Expos, played in there, but they were sold. So it's weirdly though it's the third most highly rated tourist spot in Montreal. Tourists come and see it a lot.
It is a striking looking structure, that is for sure.
Right. So I temper my toilet bowl comments on it. It is, but you know, the tower, you know, there's a that the human fly rides up has an elevator in it, so people actually ride up the elevator all the time for a view of the city. And it's right across the street from the Botanical Gardens, which you didn't draw, which I visit with my wife all the time. So I'm actually in front of I must be in front of that stadium 6 times a year at least.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that it had such controversy, but now that you mention it, I mean, anything. What's really weird, Tony, is we have a stadium in my small city that I live in far north Queensland, and it houses our rugby league team, the North Queensland Cowboys. And when it was first built, it was also compared to that being a toilet. So. Maybe there's some things happening here too, like, so it's straight from me to you. We both share something in our neck of the woods. So, like, good on our stadiums, but I'm sure ours isn't quite as beautiful as yours. Ours definitely isn't near botanical gardens, and gardens are lovely, mate. So you're very lucky to get to go to those. Man, I got to ask you, like, I've been watching Peter J. Lawson for a while, because Peter and I, pretty close, I guess. I suppose came onto the scene relatively close. I guess within a couple of months of each other. And my first coming across of Pete was Torn issue 1 for Reverie, and came out at a similar time as Battle for Bustle issue 1. And I have to say, with respect, Peter's work has, man, and I said it earlier in the show, but it's just gone through the roof, man. Quality of the action, the shots, the motion, that sort of stuff, Pete. Like, no, man, like, it's great storytelling, dude, and credit is where credit is due, mate. It's Ben, I do watch this stuff. I love artwork, man. You know that, and I partake in it. And like, I think you're well deserved of your style, how you draw things, your anatomy, man, and stuff like that. It's beautiful stuff. I mean, Tony, you're pretty damn lucky, man. Like, one story you get the great Paul Mason, and then the next story you get this bloke Peter Lawson, who's just starting to hum, man. So, that's exciting. You're on a run, mate. So, I think you're going to get Pete, or whoever's coming next to whatever story you do to, partake in, man. Like, you should be excited, man, because there's some fire burning down here. And on another note, with the storytelling sort of stuff, Jan, I myself haven't seen any of your interiors, mate. But what I have seen is a lot of your cover artwork, and the one it's not the human fly at the moment, but I just want to compliment you, sir, on your the other title that you do with IPI. The name escapes me.
Superhumanity.
Superhumanity, yeah. And mate, the ability to take so many characters on that wraparound cover and actually make a story of it, to make all of them in motion, doing things, action, man, the quality and everything to make sense, and the sheer diversity of the characters that are on that cover, man, that's a brilliant art form in itself, man. There's nothing harder than telling a story in 1-2 pages, man. And man, that's a great cover, brilliant. So commendments to you, man. And
thanks. I mean, that was another Christopher Sequeira brainwave. How many years did we work on that, Chris? From the initial
that one was in the garage for a long time, because in the end there was a jam series that had 28 Australian creators at the end of it, because it was 13 different characters if you include the master villain, and they were each created by one artist and one writer. We actually went to some people who traditionally work with each other. We said, you write and that guy or gal draws. How'd you like to create your own intellectual property, a superhero, but chuck it in this big Justice League / Avengers melting pot, a crazy jam story? And they all said, oh, mate, I'm there. I'll have it done in a week. Well, unfortunately, reality crept in, and a week was, not quite that quick. But, oh, man, the results were great. And then you had Jan and Dan Lynch, who came in and coloured the final chapter, and that's how he got the gig for Human Fly, because he did just an astonishingly good colouring job on Super Australian's number, the final chapter. And a couple of other people sort of tidied up the final chapter. Bruce Mutard, the brilliant Bruce Mutard, contributed 4 pages. Paul Mason did some key little bits of writing for the conclusion. But it was just a blast. And it was Jan and I really scratching our Justice League itch as well, I guess. And, yeah, heaps of fun. And look, not an inappropriate dress rehearsal for a comic like The Human Fly. There's probably quite a few aspects of it that worked out, Mr. Chalker. But lots of fun.
Well, I see the link, man. I see the link how it's all like flowing together. I do want to talk to you because I feel remiss because I haven't spoken about it. One of my favourite artists when I grew up was Bill Sienkiewicz, and I was head over heels, to be honest with you, as a young fellow with the New Mutants, and particularly his earlier run on Moon Knight when he was in his Neil Adams sort of style and finding himself. And then the dude just blew out of the blocks and started, creating magic, and has done ever since, man. So, he's someone that is one of the great comic book artists just in general for 40 odd years. What transpired to have this beautiful Bill Sienkiewicz cover, of The Human Fly come about? How did that come to live?
Look, it was a desire of ours that where possible, if we could do variant covers by fan favourite artists and our favourite artists, that we would try. And so we've approached a few. And in the case of Mr. Sienkiewicz, I'd actually met him once when I was a fellow guest at an Aussie convention some years ago. So I approached his agent and I said, hi, look, I met Mr. Sienkiewicz once, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm writing about now is would he be interested in da-da-da. Anyway, I was thrilled when his agent came back and she said, yes, he would, straight away. So then we just worked out terms and stuff like that. And he just turned in a marvellous piece of work. Yeah. It was just perfect. I mean, we would like to try more variant covers if the economics of it work out and the sales returns on it work out. Because, someone like Bill, you've got to compensate him, for he's been taken away from getting to paid quite a lot of money to draw some various gigs, so he's got to be reasonably compensated. Totally fair. But, that will definitely attract attention to the series. And we sort of got a plan, if we can, to have at least 2 covers for every issue of the series. We got we got one surprise one that's popped up this week. Someone who works in the gaming industry who's something has come before us that is just breathtaking as far as Human Fly goes. And so we hope to sort that out in the next couple of days. There's a very, very big name. And I'll say no more. We've been circling each other for some time. He'd be great as well. And if we can keep that formula and do it well, because, look, I guess at heart, he's an iconically designed character. That red and white, nice and simple, a bit different to a lot of other characters, just different enough, but yet still classic superhero lines. And that's probably, I don't know how the Cherry brothers came up with the costume, Tony, you might know, but I think they sort of fluked it and just, there's enough classic superhero and yet a bit odd and quirky different that people still remember it. People don't forget it.
I think it's pure luck. It's a fluke, like you said. They ran the series, I'm sure knew nothing about comics. The Human Fly as not a fly, but a guy who flies is an example of what they didn't know. But yeah, the look of the character is incredible. And, I think credit where credit's due. In the original Marvel run, they simplified the look of the comic and it's an absolutely iconic design. You know, I can remember as a kid drawing that mask with the sort of the plus sign in front over and over again, because it's a circle that's divided into four sections with the eyes. It's really fun to draw.
Yeah.
And I've had some designers create stuff. You can see it at digit.in.com, but they did kind of a simplified version of the mask that we were selling on t-shirts. It looks just so cool. It's a great iconic character. So absolutely, yeah, they completely fluked into it. No question.
Yeah. So look, that's the Sinkovich story, Leigh. It was just straightforward approach. Obviously, it rang a bell with him. He did ask through his agent. He said, "Can you tell me what the series is about?" And so I sent him a short email. I might have attached. I'd written a one-pager for Tony and Alan, which was the roadmap for the four issues that make up Volume 1. And look, I'll do the hype now, mate. Besides all you comics fans, get out there and get online and order Human Fly #1 from Diamond and Luna right now. The storyline for the first 4 issues is the west coast of Northern America, from Vancouver down to Mexico. What if the Human Fly is engaged in a massive tour of key cities down the west coast of Northern America, 3 countries, that theme of uniting, etc. I've chucked it into the storyline, but Mexico instead of Australia. And he's on a tour, and the entire tour is fraught with danger and suspicion and all kinds of stuff from all different directions. And here's where you get plugged, Mr. Scherfenhausen. And we introduce the Fly's first nasty masked and costumed villain all his own, a guy called Firesword. And Jan did a couple of designs of that, and Tony and Alan Brewer reviewed that, and Jerry reviewed that, gave us some feedback on that. I don't know if you want to talk about that design process, Jan or Tony?
Yeah.
Well, look, Chris always has a big hand in everything. So he had a lot of ideas about how the character should look, which is, as I said, this was before you came on, Tony. Chris and I have been working together for over 20 years. So we have a fairly seamless process of just bouncing ideas off each other, whoever has the core idea. But, certainly with the Fly, I think Mercury, that just came out of my head, the design for her. But, with Firesword, Chris had a lot of ideas, and I added a couple of things just as I went in, and Chris said, "Oh, what's this and what's that?" And I explained, he's got, because I think I give him open-fingered gloves at the time. You said, it looks cool, but it wouldn't be leaving fingerprints everywhere. So I covered up the gloves, and then we shot it over to Tony and sorry, my name,
Alan.
Tony and Alan, and they came back with some ideas which are great. Okay, so we just it's all about the product. Yeah, so like if somebody has a reason for doing something or wants something, it's just makes sense to go ahead and usually people, if you're working with the right people, the right people will not fix something that's not broke. They don't need to put their mark on it. And you find out over time who is making suggestions for what reason, and those are the ones that are making the suggestions for the right reason. Those are the people you keep on working with, like the fact that Chris and I have worked together for 20 years, that says a lot. That says a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, well, I think, man, from what I'm seeing here, Jan, is there's a distinct lack of ego, man, between like in any of you. It's like all passion. Talking, I mean, talking to Tony now, seeing his passion for the human fly. I mean, I've spoken to Chris numerous times. I know how passionate he is, and I'm seeing that again, like that you're vibing off. And I know Peter's super passionate about, you know, his comic books as well. You know, like he loves his drawing and things. And I think it was Tad Pietrovsky once said to me, believe it or not, you know, like the best collaborations are ones that you know, like lack ego. They're the ones that you know, like do bring something to the character, and you know, like you can put yourself aside to give to the story. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. It's one of those, you know, like good pieces of advice, man, that I've received over, you know, doing chinwags and things like that. So I think it's, yeah, I'm with you, man. It's like I get really excited about these shows. I do apologise if I get a little bit like fast paced and up and down, and just enjoy listening to people, because it's like,
You're dead right there. I actually got in the early stages of collaboration with Tad, but I can't go into much detail. It's a dark, nebulous story. It involves a character that Reverie is used in another comic, and we've been able to mesh them together really seamlessly with something Tad already had in his head.
Yeah.
So I've got his basic story rundown now of what he wants to do with it, and I'm like, dude, this sequence you've got here that you reckon would be 2 pages, nah, it's got to be 6. We've got to make that sing. It needs to be, you know, this. And Tad's like, yep, beauty, that makes sense. Let's do it. It's just back and forth. And yeah, I'm keen to see where this one will go as we work through it. It'll be fun.
yeah.
Just to finish off that Fire Sword story, again, going back to Tony's brief with the whole thing. So we had to design a costume supervillain for the Fly because he really needed one. But like Tony said, this is the real world. The Fly's in the real world. So I made it, my starting position was, let's make it grounded. So he's sort of what you would expect for the supervillain equivalent of somebody maybe in charge of a rogue militia. So it's sort of grounded in that kind of stuff, which of course is a perfect contemporary villain for any sort of thriller storyline. So we were able to get reason for a strange name like Firesword, reason for keeping his facial features hidden most of the time, and reason to be one badass, scary, dangerous person if it comes to physical combat. So, you know, but of course, but he's not so crazy that, okay, he's dressed like the Joker or the Penguin, or which wouldn't make a lot of sense, you know. It's sort of grounded in a particular thing that we're all familiar with. We know about militia groups with their own code and their own brands and their own tattoos and all that stuff. So, you know, it sort of makes sense. So, but it was interesting. And then Jan, yeah, when he was designing it, and then the comments back from Tony Allen and even Jerry Huntman. Jerry actually had some comments about the ease of movement in version 1 of the costume, because Jerry does karate. And he said, well, if this guy's a fighter, he's got to have a little bit more ease of movement than the top that Jan did on the first pass. So, yeah, it was a good, you know, a good melting pot of ideas.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. I just like the fact that you're all involved across the whole, like platform, man, internationally, like with Tony and the other gentlemen and stuff involved as well, because it's like it really does show a love for the character, and you know, and great collaboration, man. You know, like with now issue 0 is out now, isn't it? Like has that
issue 0? Yeah, issue 0 would probably still be available in comic shops. I don't think it would have come off sale everywhere. And if your comic shop has run out, you've probably got a chance of asking them if Diamond or Luna have got any extra copies to ship, because we did do a slight overprint, as they call it, which is about a 10% extra in case any copies get spoiled or there's a late minute surge. So even if your shop's sold out, ask them. They can look it up online with Diamond and Luna immediately and see if they can get one shipped the next week. That's easy to do. Issue 1 goes on sale third week of October. That's the one with either the Jan Scherfenhausen tribute to Batman and Robin Carmine Infantino cover or the Bill Sienkiewicz cover.
Very good. Okay,
so that's October, and that'll be issue 1, and then it's bi-monthly: October, December, February. So the first 4 issues, go there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, so we're starting to hum along with the Human Fly now. So Tony, over in Montreal and stuff, man, have you obviously would have taken her around to some of the comic book conventions and things like that to see what people are thinking about the comic book. You got a good vibe happening in the hometown there?
Well, I didn't do much in Montreal. I did a lot of press here. Because I was having problems getting in touch with the Comic-Con here. But we did go to San Diego 2 weeks ago. So we gave a couple of panels at San Diego. They were very well received. People were quite excited to see the variant covers. We'll be going to New York in September, October as well. We're trying to line things up for New York. So we'll be there when issue number 1 comes out. There's a lot of interest. People are intrigued by the character, by the comic, by the art, by the story. So I think we'll do what we can. There's some talk of me going to Winnipeg. Again, I found out yesterday that the person I did a podcast with yesterday is a rep for Montreal, Quebec City, Ottawa, and Winnipeg. So we'll push. We'll do as much as we can to get this thing out there and known. And
Winnipeg would be good. That's what, about 40,000 people.
Yeah, they said about 40,000 people actually. Yeah, Winnipeg is pretty far flung. I have to say, it's pretty remote, but and it's the knife capital of Canada, I've heard. So I'll have to. I heard yesterday. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to go there, and they have good guests. So I'll be pushing it, where I can. I'm only a 6-hour drive away from New York City, and New York has got the critical mass of people. It's the number 2 convention, so I'd rather push, devote my time to bigger Comic-Cons in bigger markets.
Yeah.
But this is an ongoing project. So by next year, when Montreal rolls around, there's an opportunity to do a panel. He's still a homegrown character. So I'll be where I can when I can.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Hey, Tony, are you allowed to say anything much about the animation idea for the Human Fly?
Well, we've been, again, the producer, and I'm running out of battery power, so I may cut off. I hope I don't. The producer of one of the people who's involved in the feature film scripts has got a connection to an animation company in the UK, and they're looking for ideas. And I want to, again, this is so preliminary, but to me, The Fly, I really would like the opportunity in an animated film to tell more of the Fly's backstory, which is more of the Wold Newton thing that could go back a couple of centuries, where he could meet some famous characters from fiction or their equivalents, like Sherlock Holmes or Dracula. I know Chris is a big fan. I'm playing with the idea that there's some kind of relationship between the 2 characters over time. And to me, for The Fly, in the Marvel origin story, he had a car crash in which his family died. And to me, he's the character who's trying to reestablish his own family all the time. So I think that what I'd like to show is that over his long history, he had a somewhat troubled relationship with his family. He may have been a court jester, actually, at some point.
Oh, Tony,
Um,
Tony, that is just. You're going to read something from me later on this week that you're going to love that you just said that.
Okay, great. I love it. Yeah. So I'd really like to be able to explore that, and in an animated film, you know, for all ages, see him trying to rebuild a family and maybe a relationship with a kid. And so again, our canvas is so wide, we can do so much, that again, the feature film is based on the real life story, and there are fourth wall elements where we bring in the actual superhero and the potential of the property. What's really been fun with working with Chris is developing a whole mythos outside the real life story that's still meaningful. And so I would, you know, that's an opportunity. I have to write it, and I have to write a treatment. It's been a crazy summer, so I'm hopefully maybe in a tent somewhere in in the desert somewhere. I'll have time to, or on a plane, or in a hotel room or something. Because I've been, you know, I have pretty nomadic. I have a pretty nomadic lifestyle with my work these days. So, but yeah, I want to get to it for sure.
That's awesome. Mate, I'm just going to jump in, Tony. And if your battery does run out, I would like to just think before it does. So, you know, I am so very grateful that you found time to come on this little program, Chinwag, and visited the little community here, ComX, that's been set up by my friends Shane and Kerry, and you know, very grateful, man, for your time and for you sharing your stories and your love of the character and comic books and things like that, man. By no means do I want you to leave, but I just felt like I should pass on my gratitude, just in case your battery does go dead, man, and I don't get another opportunity to thank you. So
well, you're very welcome. I think it's a pleasure to meet you. It's so great to meet Jan and Peter too online like this, and to see Chris, and to be with you in Australia, in another part, in a far-flung part of the Commonwealth. We all have the Queen on our money.
Yeah, indeed.
Might be the King soon. So yeah, really great to meet you guys. I will take this opportunity to beg off because I've got to get my day started. But we'll be in touch, and hopefully we'll speak.
It's great being able to put a face to the Canadian side of the operation. Yeah, it's been lovely hearing you talk, and you know, getting to know the rest of the team a bit more. So thanks
so much.
All right, take care, Tony.
Okay, take care.
An absolute gentleman.
Indeed. And full of passion. And full of passion for the human fly. So, gentlemen, while we've covered the human fly with the boss, and you know, we've seen his passion and what's happening in the works, would you like to talk about some other projects that you're working on at the moment, and have a little gas bag for a while to promote yourselves while you have the opportunity to do so?
Peter, maybe you go first, mate, because you haven't had a chance to chime in for a bit. And I know you got lots of things going with Reverie Comics.
Absolutely heaps right now. We're issue 3 of Torn has just come out, and we're very happy with the way that one's come up. It's I'm trying to remember who was involved. Hang on a sec, I'll pick it up because my brain's gone. Just a second.
Go to your portal, Pete. Everyone's got a comic book portal. I do. It's just out of reach.
Yeah. Just
there we go.
So yes,
that's your Tony Menzies cover.
Tony Menzies cover, which was yeah, there we go, which is a lovely Tony Menzies cover.
Yeah.
We Eli, how do you pronounce it? I can't remember. no glasses. Aberdeen, he wrote it. He's a great guy, actually. I met him after he had done this. Graham Jackson did the colours, which were just
Amazing.
job.
He is fantastic, Graham Jackson.
Just an amazing job on the covers on this one. And so this one is out now, and that'll pick that out on Referee's website, I believe. Issue 4 is almost finished script and art-wise.
Yeah.
Which is my debut at writing as well.
Oh,
well done.
And I'm just about finished the final script, which will go off to Tad Petrakowski for an edit. So I'm throwing it in his hands that he can do what he needs to fix it, because I've never written before, so we'll see how that goes. Issue 5 has also been started. I've got the first 5 pages laid out for that one. And I'm in, as I said earlier, in the early stages of working on a Dark Nebula one with Tad, which should be very exciting as well. And
man, you're busy.
Very busy, yes.
It's good. It's good.
Almost finished a poster / cover for Sky's Cavern Library.
Yeah.
And for Dashan's Lisa Ray comic as well. So plenty on, and very keen to get into some more Human Fly stuff as soon as that becomes available too.
I was talking to Jim Kruger today, actually. So he thinks he's got his story worked out, the broad strokes of these issues 5, 6, 7, and 8. So, that'll develop, I guess. And, we've got you in the crosshairs, Pete, for that one.
That actually, every time I think of that blows me away to work with a writer like that.
Mate, look, much as I love you as a human being, that's not why, you're under consideration for doing it any more than, Jan is, because he's a nice bloke. It's because you can do the work and you can do it well. I mean,
I was going to say, I'm not drawing a Chris Sequeira comic because I like him. We can go and have a beer if I like him, but I'm not drawing.
Exactly. And Leigh, that's the interesting thing, because with IPI Comics, Jerry Huntman owns the company and is financing the thing. I can't just give work to my mates because I like them. I'm making choices about people, skills, and whether I think they're reliable and dependable, etc. I've got to make that. Now, if there's a little bit of personal knowledge, etc., that can take away some of my stresses of whether I can rely on them, or whether they would be an easy person to work with. And when I say easy, you just mean professional. And, Jan, I know, and even Peter, I know, have got stories about working with people they wouldn't actually call professional, and how painful and how it just ruins a job. Forget about the money. You just don't want to do it. If people aren't professional, and professional means you don't have to piss in someone's pocket, but you just need to be pleasant and well managed. You don't have to grovel. But some people are difficult and rude for no reason, and you just go, oh God, you're making something that should be joyful into something I'm dreading.
I think, you don't want to work with those people or hang around with them in life anyway. So why would you?
But they can turn that fundamental act of creativity that we've been talking about all evening. Yeah, they poison it, and you just got to walk away.
So personally, if you're in that environment, you can't put your best work on paper.
No.
It's not
No.
going to come out of you. You've got to have a bit of love for what's there. I've, just expressed my complete thanks to Gary Della, who got me into this whole comic thing. And he has been so supportive and given me so much rope when I needed it to do things, so much encouragement. Like, I wouldn't be doing this without him.
Yeah.
At all.
That bloke, he always seems so calm.
Yeah.
Right? He just seems like the guy that would be the placid center of the cyclone. It could go on around him. And he always gives me the impression that he would just stand on his 2 feet and he'd be the calm place with chaos is going on. He doesn't seem to get ruffled.
Yeah, he is a steering ship. There's so many people putting stuff into Reverie, and he's dragging this person from here and this person from here and putting them together. And
he's a very, very nice gentleman. I can see why you'd want to keep going back and working for him, mate.
He handed me Torn, which has been his love child for a lot longer than a lot of people realise, from way back before he did the original Reverie comics. And he handed me that to do on the strength of a not very good Wonder Woman drawing. And okay, I'm going to redo it because it kind of looks dodgy now, but that was a real leap of faith to throw that to someone who hasn't done it before, and to not only that, but to design the look of these characters, to design Torn, the League of the Persecuted, Billabong, all that, and to come up with designs of that'll work and that he's happy with. And he told me what he wanted, what his idea was. I honestly don't think I did a lot of redesigns for Torn. I think most of them I did them, and he goes, yes, which was kind of surprising. I think, and then Cole in this issue 3 there, she went through a few changes before we nailed down on her. But that was as much around how we wanted to present her as a character, so that the way she looked had something to do with what she was standing for as well. She's a bit more than just a chick in a fancy costume. She's the spirit of the Barrier Reef, and she needed to portray that goddess mobility in and be aquatic without being something that's been done 1,000 times before. That was a tricky part. But yeah, we got her worked out, and I've tweaked her a bit since as well. So, but yeah, he's just so supportive. You just send him stuff, and he never nags you. He's like, "Oh, how are you going with that? Beauty, on you go."
Good stuff.
Oh yeah,
that's what I found with this doing the Fly as well. That it was a lot tighter deadline than I've had before, which was fine. But Chris was great. Everyone on the chat was great. Tony was great. And if I had any issue that I wanted to bring up, it was just brought up, dealt with, and move on. And there weren't any though, because all the communication lines were just so open.
The other thing, and here's a little peek inside the tent, Leigh. At one stage, we had a little Facebook group, just like a chat window opened up, and as Dan Lynch was doing the colouring, right, he was posting up both the pages finished, but also the pages with the flats or the colours first. And Jan was able to chime in and say, I was thinking that would be a bit like this or a bit like that or whatever, or that's freaking perfect, Dan, etc. And we could all see it, that we could all see it in real time, and you didn't have to go looking for, sorry, sorry everyone, I'm going to give Mark Zuckerberg a thumbs up because Facebook, we can just see it and you get a ping. And if you're busy, you don't look at it. But if you're not busy, you go, oh, shit, there's another page of dance. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Oh, and then Jan will come in. If there was a correction, he could make it. And the same with Steve K on lettering on both this project and another book. He's doing Dark Detective Sherlock Holmes for us, the lettering for that. Pages come through. What do you think, guys? Ting, 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 ting. Yeah. Very, live and engaging, and everybody's eyes are on it. It's fully transparent. And, of course, we're all getting excited because we're actually getting the freaking thing done,
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it too, isn't it? It adds to that enthusiasm, and then everyone's seeing things come in, and you get that fire burning, and it's like, and like it does it in its own way. Those like little chats with creatives and stuff like that do create bonds and friendships and little communities within themselves, man. So you become tighter working together and stuff too, I've had a few of those with friends of mine that have done work with each other. But I'd like to just second that Gary Della comment about what a calm and very genuinely nice fellow he is, because he's the guy that gave me my shot, Battle for Bustle, and when I was becoming more engrossed on a community aspect with like ComX and the shows like Drink and Draw, and I guess doing more live streams and things like that. One of a conversation that I had to have with him at the time, which I was quite nervous about. He was most gracious and understanding in the fact that for me as a creator and what was happening at that timeline, that it was okay for me to take Battle for Bustle from Reverie and go to ComX, and put it into this part of the community. And I thought it was going to be a very difficult conversation. It was a long conversation, but it was one of understanding once we communicated. And he's been a constant supporter of the comic book and things like that. So yeah, I second that, man. I think very highly of Gary Della and the opportunities he provided me in the early days and that as well, man. And how he's handled himself and stuff too, just between him and I. So yeah, get behind Reverie and Gary Della for anyone out there in Australia as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very nice fella. So, Dr. Jan, what do you have coming up, mate, other than the human fly and your constant, your architectural illustrative skills that have been so heavily discussed this evening? And are you keen to get back into drawing some jungles and or perhaps snow and blizzards, like just for a bit of a holiday and a break?
Well, drawing the figures, that's all the fun. I would just draw one big long fight scene comic. It's like two mutants beating the shit out of each other. That's my jam, but yeah, I would love to draw a Kazar comic. That's the sort of thing that, dinosaurs, jungles. I like lush organic stuff, but I'm not thinking too much about anything other than the human fly. Though Chris and I are always talking about 5 different projects anyway, and the projects we're loving working on the human fly. It's a great project. You
can tell him about our dalliance with H.P. Lovecraft.
I was thinking about it. Well, why don't you tell him?
No, from your point of view.
You tell him.
What?
So,
I can't wait to see that in print.
Yeah, so the first bit is we've done an 8 100-page black and white comic that's going to be in a book coming out in March next year. All the rest of the book is short stories by big name writers like Joe Lansdale, Jack Dan, big international names and some big local names as well. And it's called, and I can talk about it because they put a slide up at San Diego Comic-Con for us. It's called Into the Cthulhuverse, Lovecraftian Tales in Other Literary Realities.
Yeah.
And so basically we've said to some of the best writers in fantasy, do H.P. Lovecraft meets whatever. And people have done so. It's nearly all original, although there's about 2-3 reprints. One reprint is, I'll mention it because it's a great story, big name writer, and I'll make you laugh, and it's a perfect thing. It's Joe R. Lansdale, that really hard-boiled horror writer from Texas. Joe R. Lansdale has written basically H.P. Lovecraft meets Huckleberry Finn, right?
Okay.
It's an amazing story called Dread Island. But we got Ramsey Campbell doing, sword and sorcery, like a Conan-esque barbarian of his creation meets Lovecraft. We've got American Peter Rawlik, and who's a famous Lovecraftian writer over there, and collaborator Sal Ciano have done Lovecraft's Reanimator meets a dainty old English lady detective in an English country village. I wonder who that could possibly be. So, it's just crazy stuff like that. So Jan and I have done the only comic in the thing, a black and white comic, H.P. Lovecraft, if he maybe stumbled into the universe of 4 cosmic-powered astronaut superheroes from the 1960s.
Oh.
A family of 4.
It's a fantastic story. Chris,
it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. It sounds fantastic.
It's fantastic for comic book fans.
That's right. It's fantastic for a lot of reasons. That's right.
For a lot of reasons.
It's like a wonderful thing.
That's right. And curb your enthusiasm, so that's right. But we've done that, and there is another project with a Lovecraftian bent that is a comics project, and it's all we've done so far is discuss it, Jan and I, but it could be our next long-form collaboration. It'll be 100% creator-owned, but it picks up on some of the themes and some of the tone of the Lovecraft / Cthulhu mythos, while still being its completely own thing, and still being embracing some of the aspects of probably the last 50 years of superhero comics the things that we both like. And we might do that next after the Human Fly as a Jan and me thing. There's probably 8 really strong issues in there. And it would be a meaty sort of a read. Jan's really good too with, and we riff on this stuff, that whole sort of world of intellectualism and critical thinking and reflecting on, at the risk of sounding like an utter wanker, existential type of issues and philosophical issues like, are we, is there an afterlife and all that kind of stuff, and just even the way humans try to grapple with that and argue with each other about that and try to kill each other, just even discussing those things. And it strikes me as really interesting to try and inject, even on one layer, even if it's just one skinny layer in the story, sandwich or cake or whatever, some of that into something that's got tropes of horror and action and a bunch of other stuff. So it's early days yet, but it's got aspects that Yarn could design his heart out. He could go, right, we could kick around, okay, that's going to be character A, B, C, D, and E. And, okay, we draw from horror and Lovecraft and fantasy, but what's our original spin we're going to put her? And Yarn could go berserk doing that stuff.
So, I love your enthusiasm, Chris. I'm looking at Yarn down here, and I'm like watching you, all enthusiastic man, and dropping bombs and stuff like that. And I'm looking at Yarn just out of one eye too down here, and he hasn't moved. And I'm not sure whether it's like internal excitement or he's actually sitting there like, oh my God, I'm lucky I'm retired, like Chris is just going to inundate me with like all this imagination, man, like. That's awesome, man.
But again, because we got that free flowing relationship.
Yeah.
The appeal of this one is we own the intellectual property 100% ourselves.
Yeah.
No one's gonna tell us what to do with this one. It's a story that we're gonna push each other to make it a good, solid, and not a self-indulgent story. But no one can say, "Are you going too far in that territory or that territory? That's not populist enough or whatever." We can actually push ourselves a little bit, go into, not the same old story tropes and ideas that you might have to pull back to if it was, for a commercial work for hire kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, it just gives us a few other opportunities. So, it's a juicy one. Not sure if we're going to bite that one off next. And Yarn hasn't, said that, yep, that's the one I think I want to do next. But we both like it. We both know that we'll have a lot of interesting cups of coffee over
it. Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
we've got at least projects up in the air. So, we need to live well into the next 100 years in order to get everything done.
Yeah. No, I mean, but that's the beauty of the imagination, isn't it? It's like I reckon I have ideas all the time that I'm always taking notes, man, and pinning on my wall, and like notepads and stuff. And I think at the moment, like that's the one I'm doing next, and then I forget about it, and I'm onto something else, and like it's just the beautiful fluidity of a fertile mind, mate. You know what I mean? Like and just having stories that you want to come out. It's actually. I like where you're going, Chris, with like the thoughts and stories of like existentialism and stuff like that, man. Because it's like, I think those sorts of ideas and that are important to think of. Like whether in a deep sense or just a light sense. You know what I mean? Like, and I think they add a lot of depth to stories and things like that. Some of the best stories.
The interesting thing about Lovecraftiana as one particular territory to play in is a lot of writers who followed in Lovecraft's footsteps in the succeeding decades right up until now, and it's 100 years, mate. It's 100 years of this stuff. A lot of writers, particularly who are influenced by a guy called August Derleth, who sort of claimed he took control of the Lovecraft estate more or less, but he certainly did publish Lovecraft stuff after Lovecraft died quite a bit. August Derleth wrote quite a few follow-on pieces, and they were well-meaning pieces, and Derleth wasn't a bad writer. But he used to boil them down into almost a Christian template. There is a horde of supernatural beings that are heavenly and good, and there's a horde of supernatural beings that are dark and evil. There's the what is it? The old ones and the Oh, the old ones and the something or others. Anyway, so so he would do it that way, and a lot of writers have gone that route. Whereas for me, I sort of Lovecraft himself was an abject materialist who didn't believe in any kind of religious system or cosmology, and in some ways, he sort of snuck science fiction in as the explanation for all this weird supernatural stuff. You know, instead of like demons from the eternal flames, there was evil creatures climbing through strange alien geometry to get into our universe.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is for me a really interesting idea to play with. You know, is it science or is it not science? Can you have cosmic horror? Can you have spiritual horror if there's no spirits, if they're just beings from another? And how do you deal with that? And what happens if the protagonists disagree with that? And who's to say who's right? And yeah, it's almost I'm attracted because it's such a large playing field.
Oh man, it is. It's like it's fully open. Like there's so much space you can work with in that.
And you can do all that.
Yeah.
You can do all that, and you can still have a Shoggoth come and rip somebody's head off.
Yeah, yeah. You can ask those questions and have that good little bit of action. I mean, man, it's well, you've got a track record of a fertile mind. I mean, you've delved into many universes, man. Star Trek, and like all the stuff you're doing now.
Look, Star Trek, man, that was pure indulgence. That was another gift from the gods. I got to thank editor named Heather Antos who took a chance on me on that. She was the most professional editor I've ever worked with. She was fantastic. But it was like I pitched it. It was like 2 sentences, and she said I could pitch some ideas. I pitched the 3 ideas, and they were no more than 2 sentences each, if that. And I thought, I wonder if she'll like any of them. Anyway, she came back about a week or 2 later, and she said, "Okay, yeah, Paramount said we're doing number 2." What? You've already taken it to Paramount, and they said we're doing that. Okay, I guess I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So it was a delight in every part of it. It was nerve-wracking as hell because big license, right? Yeah. I'm not going to pretend. Big license, and I had a simple story idea, but it had a couple of sciencey type of complexities I had to pull off to make it make sense and to get away with it. And I knew it could, but I was still scared about doing it. Yeah.
Oh man, I'd be terrified of doing something like that. But that's half of the battle, isn't it, man? Like overcoming the fear and like having a go at things. And like you were saying, like was mentioned before, sometimes you get, I guess, rejected. Other times you get surprisingly accepted and things like that. That's every facet of life, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah, it's not just stories, but I am. I just like the dynamic between you and Yarn, man, because like Yarn's just sitting there chilling, and it's like I reckon like Yarn's definitely I'm the listening type. I'm just gonna like relax, and I can see Chris's dynamic being the definite chatty one, and Yarn's just taking it all in. Like,
look, I think it's a case of when we get to topics that grab us, but look, I have got a bigger blabbermouth than most people, Mr. Chalk.
No,
I guarantee you. But look, Yarn will speak up well and most articulately when we're wrestling with a story problem or a design problem or whatever, and he'll argue the case in really clear and convincing language. So yeah, don't worry, mate. He's not Mr. Shy when he's more a case of when it's necessary for words. The man has got those words.
Well, that's fair too, man. It's I think that's fair. It's you just say what you mean, man. Like just add that little bit of polish when necessary, or don't let's take it away. It's a good quality. It's that you make a good team. The pair of you. It's
Thanks.
like a band, man. It's like you can tell by the chemistry of people, mate. You know what I mean? And it's amazing. Like even in art and comic book creations and stuff, like chemistry works. Hey, and how you communicate. Like again, it's for me, and like what I'm learning through is it's insane how much all of the simple, most basic thing, just everything across all planes are connected, man. The communication, the chemistry between people, whether it's like art, just relationships, or like between people and nature and all that sort of stuff. It's like you got to have that vibe thing going, man.
Look, a mate of yarns of mine is Chewy Chan. He does storyboards for Hollywood and design work for Hollywood and lots of other stuff, and he's done comics, etc.
Yeah.
And good mate of ours, he did the variant cover for Human Fly issue 0. The green one with the green background with the fly standing. Anyway, fantastic guy and fantastic artist, been a buddy of ours for decades. Anyway, Chewy's worked for George Miller on Happy Feet and Mad Max Fury Road, and he worked on the ill-fated Justice League movie that they worked on for 10 months that didn't get made. Right? And Chewy's old boss, George Miller, is obviously the Australian big shot international director. I've seen interviews with him where he talks about what he would wishes. Somebody asked him something like what he wishes he saw more of. And this applies so much to movies now and to comics and books. He said he'd like to see more of situations where people take the job on because of the story, not because of themselves or their ego or this, but because they want to be in service to the story. So I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember the exact quote, but that was pretty close to it. And when you see these big budget movies, whether they're Marvel movies, DC movies, big franchises restarted or particularly failing to be restarted, the ones that go badly wrong, you can just smell. There's 5 executives, producers in there that have pulled the thing in different directions, and that's why it doesn't make any flippant sense, and that's why it's not a good story, and that's why it comes off the rails in Act 3 and just goes into a ditch. And same for comics, etc. And it's the same for any collaboration between writers and artists or whatever. If people keep the egos out of the room or say, okay, I've got an ego, but I'll just put it one step behind while we work on the collective good of the story being the best it is.
Yes.
That's when the thing works. And the minute those priorities get swapped around, you're on a one-way trip to disaster.
Yeah, 100%.
If I could just bring that back, this is something I mentioned before, that when you work with the right people, the people that really know their stuff, you want to be involved in something that's going to be good. It's going to have your name on it. Okay, so you're an idiot to shoot yourself in the foot by fighting an idea which is the right idea. And if you are good, you know the right idea. Somebody says to you, we should do this. That's what happened. Chris comes to me and says, I've got a story. I go, great story. And I say to him, but I think if we do this, that would be an improvement. It's like, great. If I give him some pages, love all of this, but that bit there, if I don't know what I'm doing, if when he tells me this, I can't see it. And this is where it's art and science are very similar. That it's like an equation. There is actually, there's 6 of one and half a dozen the other, or there's definitely better than not. And if it's 6 of one and half a dozen the other, then it's like do what you like, But if it's this is the good way to do it, or the better way to do it, and that's who you want to be working with. Somebody who understands story dynamics, art, perspective, all of these things, what the reader needs to see, then together you build a really strong product, And that's why it works with when Chris and I work together. And a few other people that I've been able to work with, where it's just like, and working with someone who you're that in tune with, and where you can, and we have egos. We have good, healthy, sizable egos. Put us in the room with someone we don't respect, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. So, which is why I don't want to work with someone I don't respect, because it's going to get ugly, And I think Chris, it's the same, We don't suffer fools gladly. So we work together.
Look,
we suffer these two fools gladly. These are the two.
Look, I'll suffer fools very politely, unless I get to the situation where the fool is mistaking my politeness for weakness, right? But that's my rule of life anyway. Yeah, I'm happy to be civil and polite, even when I think a person's being difficult to a point. But if they start to, actually take the pee out of me, the gloves come off. But but if they just want to be silly and wrong and stubborn, then I don't care, and I'll just smile and go, "That's nice," But if they think that means I'm going to be a punching bag, that's when things get a bit interesting. I've seen one or two of those moments. So not at him, but he says, I can think of one time when we were in an office works,
Yes.
and somebody who worked there tried to have a lend of me. But anyway, that was fun. But anyway, but look, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, because they're just stories, but God, they make our hearts pump, don't they?
They do, man. They do.
They do. They just, it's But look, the difference between caring and not caring is, the difference between being a professional and not being a professional, regardless whether you're getting paid 10 cents a page or, $1 million for a screenplay. I very much am a huge fan of the American writer J. Michael Straczynski. And if you ever want to read a book that will blow your mind and bring a tear to your eye as well, it's his biographical book, Becoming Superman. What that guy had to go through to become the writer that he's become, and a master of screenplays, comic books, novels, radio plays, TV. He's done it all. Journalism. He's done it all. But he so fiercely protective of the story. There's a story in that book about a fight he undertook for a particular story for a science fiction TV series. I won't spoil it or anything, but it's just like, this guy was prepared to lay down and die, metaphorically, for the story.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wasn't about him. And he could be quite reasonable. And this guy has done some amazing pieces of work. He did that movie, the one with Angelina Jolie, about she has the child that gets kidnapped, and it was based on a true story at the Changeling, and it was swapped around with another kid, and the cops brought this other kid back to her and said, "There's your kid." A true story set in the 20s or 30s, won an Oscar or got nominated for an Oscar. Clint Eastwood directed.
I was going to say, was that a Clint Eastwood movie? Because I seem to remember that. Yeah, I loved Babylon 5.
Yeah. He did all the Babylon. Marvelous writer, and and what he. Sorry, Pete.
I'm actually just rewatching Babylon 5 at the moment.
Yeah, amazing story, and there's some great Bab 5 stories in that book. But that guy would take a bullet metaphorically for story, and not about him, And I guess the more you care, the better your work will be. The more you'll stretch yourself, the more you'll push yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not about you being right. It's about that's being right for the story. So, it's a fascinating sort of two-way gate, because you've got to have a strong enough ego to stand up for something that suits the integrity of the work, but you've also got to be open-minded enough so when that one person from anywhere sticks their hand up and goes, "Sir, you're about to make a mistake. That's a really bad scene or a really bad bit of dialogue," or I don't get it. That's got nothing to do with the story. And whether that comes from the artist, whether that comes from the writer, whether that comes from the editor, whether it comes from one of your beta readers or whatever, you've got to have enough humble to go, okay, they're not saying that just to piss me off. I don't think. Can I at least check? So, interesting stuff. And I guess, and look, not all of us will get it right every time, but it's part of the process. Because of course, once it's out of your hands and in print or on screen, it's too late.
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess, man, that's sort of touching on using your intuition and stuff to help you decipher decisions and break things down too. It's just understanding your own self and inner voice to get the point across. But you should always listen to people. Hey, it's like you take their advice. You take what's good that works for you. You just sort of separate it, like sieve it out. You know what I mean? Like to create your own unique voice and everything like that. It's but definitely always listen to people. Like I found early on, coming from my echo chamber of North Queensland, I thought I was like, I know what I'm doing, and you very quickly, Matt, bud, you got no idea. You know what I mean? Like, just sit down, like keep those ears open and and listen and learn, man. So it's, but also like creative determination and vision, like is something that can't be taken from some people, and determination and persistence and I guess it stems down to what their boundaries and their integrity ensue in the story as well, I suppose. Like there's a whole heap of, like different things in the whole creative process, man. It is. I love hearing like your side of things, man. It's because of your experience, and like I like hearing like Jan working with you and jiving, and Pete. I like tonight because like he's vibing and got all this stuff happening, and like it's awesome to see all this sort of stuff. So
I think it's probably time to say goodnight for me. Mate, Leigh, thank you so much for being host to this, giving us so much time to plug what we're doing with this project and others.
It's always a pleasure, Chris, man. It's always a pleasure. And thank you very much. And I was just going to say myself, like we should wind this up a bit so I can get to our ending. But Jan, so it's been a pleasure to meet you this evening.
Absolutely. It's as I said at the start, it's always great to spend time with like-minded individuals and talk about mutual passions. So it's been a fantastic pleasure.
Yeah, I hope we can catch up again, mate. So, like, there'll be plenty more Chinwags coming. So, hopefully, you can come on one of these days, mate. Now that you're retired and you've got a few, Tuesday nights free, mate, somewhere in the future, and have a good game. And every success, man, for you and the Human Fly coming out. And I look forward to reading it. Peter J. Lawson, mate, proud of you, buddy. So it's keep up that good work hard, and keep on hustling, brother, because it's like you're doing good. And
out those PSBs, boy, I need more.
Yeah. Just man, just keep doing what you're doing. It's very inspiring. And thank you, mate. Now, Pete, you can be found at Reverie Publications. You can be found at IPI Comic Books, where Jan and Christopher can be found as well.
And people can regularly see me on public transport.
Okay, that's good to know, mate. You might get some taps on the shoulders tomorrow. Now, Christopher Sequeira, one thing I would like to say to you, sir, and I said it earlier in the show, mate, I'm so happy that you're happy and you're feeling a lot better now in the battle that you've gone through, mate. I'm glad that you are here with us this evening.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, no, look, maybe one small procedure to come, but we're just about at the over all of those dramas, so that's all good.
Oh, it's good, man, and sending energy to you, brother. So it's I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Jeffrey. On a more serious note, everyone knows as I bring to the show, the end of the show, I always like to talk about mental health. It's an important thing. So a very important friend of mine today had a birthday, and I'd like to wish her a happy birthday and hope it was a special day for her. That person is very special to me because of my darkest moment. That was an individual when I thought that I was alone and no one else was around to give me a hand through some pretty hard stuff. Out of nowhere, this person was there. And I don't really understand whether that was a synchronicity or a divine intervention or what happened, but that person was there. So I wish her a very happy birthday, and I hope you had a lovely day. My point being is that not all people are lucky in moments like I was and don't have friends or family or people that can help them out of their dark moments and times. It is important for you to check on your brothers and sisters. It's important for you just to be nice and kind and love people. Put the hate aside, man. There's too much of that stuff going on. Walk past someone tomorrow and smile. You never know. It might make their day. Give a mate a ring tomorrow and see how they're going. Who knows? You may be that person at that exact moment that just pulls them out of something that they may regret and you may regret for not contacting them. Look after your people, and it doesn't cost anything to be kind. Gentlemen, thank you very much for tonight. Community is unity, and always Chinwag is and will always be made with love. Take care and see you all next week. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, sir.
See you guys.
This show is sponsored by the ComX Shop. Check out over to comx.shop to pick up a variety of Australian comics from multiple creators and publishers, all for one flat postage rate. We hope you enjoyed the show.